Hi everyone, Ben here. I wanted to go over our new Lifeboat Academy overview and see how it resonates with you. So most of us are aware that the times are bumpy and they are likely to get bumpier. So it's time to start thinking about resilience and what it means to you. We've been talking with people for a couple of years now, lots of different people, and asking them, what does resilience look like to you? And what we've discovered is that resilience is like a Venn diagram. There are lots of different aspects that all come together to create true personal and community level resilience. So resilience means different things to different people, but they're all part of the story. So one of the things that resilience means is food and a productive, regenerative, and beautiful food production system. So for some people, resilience looks like a regenerative farm that can provide food for the whole community, regardless of what may be coming down the climate pike. For other people, resilience is really about the community itself, and a model of resilience is a place where people can come together and build those relationships together. For others, resilience lies in skill building and the practical and interpersonal skills necessary to grow food, purify water, and work well together with each other. Many of us recognize that we can't plan for the future because the future is going to be somewhat unpredictable. And so really resilience is more a way of working than it is any concrete thing, which we talk about as life as an experiment, figuring out ways that we can adapt and pivot as necessary under changing conditions. Uh, some aspects of it that are really important are also the healing part of resilience. How do we develop our own inner spiritual and psychological strength to be able to go with the flow and to be able to meet the challenges that might be coming our way? Something that we sort of half jokingly refer to as the farmistery, half farm, half monastery, half recovery retreat. There's also the aspect of recreating the village, of bringing together people with diverse skills and knowledge in such a way that we can work productively with each other, and be able to provide the wide variety of things that we need. And ultimately, we believe that resilience lies in reclaiming the commons, reclaiming a relationship to the land and the resources that are our common sustenance. So when talking about the commons, there's a lot of confusion. And so what do we mean when we say that we are trying to reclaim the commons? There's a lot of similarity between the North American indigenous understanding of the land as all our relations and the European indigenous model of the commons, as well as other land-based ways of working. It's really about centering the land and recognizing the land as the common source of all of our sustenance. And so one of the things we say here is that we care for the land as a way of healing the people, and we heal the people to care for the land, recognizing that there is a mutual support and a symbiotic relationship between the community that works the land itself, and the sustenance that it provides back to the community. And for that to happen, we need people who are able to to comment, and or commoners for the commons. We live in a society that has become very individualistic, very consumerist, very isolated and disconnected. And so by centering the land, we hope to overcome some of that narcissistic bias that has been conditioned into many of us, so that we can actually find ways of combining our strengths, our perceptions, and our abilities in such a way that we all come off a little bit stronger and a little bit wiser. So most of the work that we do here is based on the idea of the fair share footprint. This is something that's grown out of the ecological footprint and is really a simple concept. If you take the natural resources of the planet and you divide by the 8.1 billion people, we each get a share of that should and must provide for all of our material needs. It feeds us, it clothes us, it takes care of our energy and our shelter demands, and it also needs to take care of sequestering any carbon that we may be releasing into the environment. So everything we do is based on this idea of working within our fair share. And in fact, one of the core missions of the Lifeboat Academy and our main campus is to make those fair share footprints real and tangible. And it also becomes an ethical base on how we're working. So learning to live sustainably means learning to live within, making sure that our needs fit within our fair share footprint. So ultimately, what we're trying to do then is to reclaim the commons one footprint at a time. And that really involves these two twinned activities. The first activity is about making land available in the commons, taking it out of the commodity market, taking it out of this idea of something that we just exploit, and moving it into the realm of the commons where we understand the land as our shared source of sustenance. And the other part of that then is developing our ability to act as commoners. So there's both a personal, interpersonal level development and a legal and financial level to the project that we're engaged in. So the way that we do that is we're going to bring together a group of stakeholders, or we are bringing together a group of different stakeholders, each with different strengths and needs, and figure out how we can all work together to reclaim the commons. And so we're formed as a multi-stakeholder community services co-op. That form gives us the ability to account for and integrate the different needs of the different stakeholder groups. And for us, the four primary groups are the people who have access to the financial and legal capacity of making land available, the people with the skills necessary for working that land and making it productive, the boots on the ground, people who can actually dedicate the time and resources and energy to making things happen physically on the ground, and then the community of support surrounding that can, where many hands make light work. So the whole idea behind the lifeboat, as I said, is based on the fair share footprint. And so at its simplest level, in terms of the physical nature of the project, you can imagine as a working model a 16-person homestead. The property that we are currently on, we think represents 16 fair share footprints. So at its simplest level, imagine that we gather together 16 partners who are each willing to roll up their sleeves, make a financial commitment, work the land in such a way that we provided for all of our needs, and hopefully with extra abundance that we could support the community around us. So of course, that's our starting point. It's our kind of hypothetical and somewhat simplified model. And as we move forward, we have to sort of complexify that to make allowances for existing conditions. So on that model, we want to make sure that everyone is contributing in a way that works for them and also that feels equitable and fair overall. So one of the ways that we do that is through an idea called commitment pooling that comes from Will Rudnick, who is from Kenya or living in Kenya. And it is sort of an elaboration on a shared resource pool. And basically, we start with an understanding that we have the commons, and the commons by itself is only half of the model. And the other part is we need labor that actually will care for that land and provide the goods that we need, goods and services that we need to support ourselves. So effort plus the commons equals some sort of goods. We then value those goods based on the time that it takes to create them. Those goods go into the shared pool, and we create a ledger for everybody who's involved in the project. And whatever time you've put towards creating those goods gets credited in your ledger. And then we eventually populate our pool where many people are contributing time and effort. based on their strengths and capacity, and we start to populate the shared resource pool. Eventually, it's time to start taking things out of the pool. So our first example, the person who gave 2 hours to create one thing, takes something else out of the pool that's valued at 3 hours. And in a similar way, we simply note against their ledger that they've received goods of that value. And this process also can be used, or the shared resource pool can be used by people who aren't in the commons per se. And then they take something out of the commitment pool, and we simply use a market rate conversion to give a dollar value to that. And the non-commoner simply pays into a common fund, the equivalent of the value, the market value of the goods that they pull out. Eventually, we use up the resources of the shared pool, and it comes time to sort of balance the books. And there are going to be some people who the combination of things that they've contributed and things that they've received from the common pool balances out and they own nothing. But then, of course, there are going to be people in different conditions. So there are going to be some people who have received more from the common pool than they've contributed in terms of time. And no problem, no hassle. We simply calculate the difference between the hours they've committed and the hours that they've received. And we use a dollarly conversion, and that time gets converted into dollars, and that money goes into the common fund. And that makes it possible then for people who have contributed more time than they've received to basically cash out that investment in time. So we do the same thing. We total up the difference between what they've given and what they've received. And then the common fund, we subtract any expenses that we have, and that creates a surplus pool. And then basically as a sort of profit sharing, we divide up that surplus based on per hour contributions, and people get paid back for what they're due. So the commitment pool gives us a sort of accounting mechanism that allows us to track the relative contribution and benefits that people have received and make sure that it all comes out in the wash in the end. And of course, that system needs, it's great to have the accounting system, but that needs a deeper base of trust and understanding for it to be effective. And so our governance system really provides the foundation on which that accounting system makes sense. And we've been using a combination of circle process and sociocracy in our work together for multiple years now, probably something like 3 years. And we're finding that combination to be an incredibly effective tool that allows people to make contributions, gravitate towards their strengths in such a way that we all benefit from it. And so that combination of the commitment pool plus sociocracy gives us a healthy culture in which we can aspire to a fair and equitable system of contributions and benefits. So let's talk a little bit more about the legal structure that makes that all possible. So I mentioned that we are structured as a multi-stakeholder co-op, and the basis of that then are shares in the system. And we started off going back to our working model, the idea of a 16-person homestead. And we had this idea of, well, then we just have a footprint share, and each of those 16 people would own one of the 16 footprint shares. They would all make an equal financial contribution. They would all make an equal physical contribution to the maintenance and the productivity of the homestead. And that's our starting point. But one of the things we realized early on is that that can be a really steep point of entry. So one of the first things that we did is we divided that footprint share, the one of 16 for the homestead, we divided that share into 100 parts. So you can think about it as a percentage of a full footprint share. So we have 100 shares for each footprint on the homestead, And in our case, that means we have 1,600 total footprint shares that are the basis of the co-op. But then we also needed to account for the fact that people are in different circumstances, and there are people who are able to contribute the energy and the boots on the ground aspect of it, but oftentimes they don't have the financial investment that they can make that that full commitment to the dollars required to secure the property. Likewise, there are people who have that financial ability, but they don't have the capacity or the inclination to be boots on the ground. So what we've done then is divide that footprint share into two parts, the deed share and the care share, to divide those relative aspects of the overall footprint, the legal financial side and the care and stewardship side. And then we surround those deed shares and care shares with community shares to represent the broader community that will have less of a direct investment, but whose overall support lightens the load of the people who are central to the project. So let's just break them down a little bit more. As I mentioned, the deed share is really about the financial aspect. And that means that it's backed by the real estate value of the property. So in case anything went wrong, if we had to abandon the project, then we simply sell the property and the people who hold the deed shares are made whole, basically paid back their investment, plus whatever interest accrues. And we're sad that the project doesn't work, but people can walk away financially whole. Because it is really only representing the financial aspect, there's no dues and there's no formal commitment for care of the property. In some ways, you're like the silent partner in the silent investor, although you do have a seat at the Stewardship Council and your voice is considered as part of the whole. And the commitment pool then becomes an optional way for you to get involved, but there's no requirement that you are involved in the commitment pool. The care share on the other side is the stewardship aspect. So it is really about balancing the need to care for the property with access to provide that care. And because you are taking on the responsibilities of making everything work, that also means that the care shareholders are the ones who are responsible for the overall dues, for the overhead and operating costs of the project. And as if you were thinking in a traditional model, the care share shares are the employee shares. And so they would be responsible for participating in the commitment pool. And then for the community shares, the idea is it's really about making support more easy. And so it's a low cost, low commitment way of showing support and expressing material support. And in a similar way, we try to balance the rights and responsibilities. So there is limited access to the resources of the commons and limited expectations around care for those resources. There's no dues, but there is the opportunity without the requirement of participating in the commitment pool. So one thing that you might do if you were a community member who wanted to get involved is participate in, for example, helping to tend the gardens and then receiving as a result of that care of the gardens, your share of veggies as a way of paying you for your time. So there would be ways of taking on smaller pieces of responsibility and being compensated. So because we have the different share structures, it allows people to pick their own way, choose your own adventure in how you want to get involved. So one of the stakeholder groups we've talked about over the years have been, we used to call them fair share sponsors, and we're now calling them benefactors. Benefactors are people who own exclusively deed shares. And as such, then they get the rights and responsibilities that accrue to that, which means they're not responsible for the day-to-day operations, for the boots on the ground part of it. They also don't get access to the resources of the commons as part of their deed share. But what they do get is that financial investment and the backing of the real estate, and they get to contribute in that way. And of course, because the overall footprint share has been divided into sub-shares, it's also possible for benefactors to get involved in to any degree that they would like. There could be benefactors that own as little as one deed share. There could be some that own 100 or even more than that, depending on how many shares are available at the time. And likewise, there is nothing that prevents a benefactor from also investing in some care shares. This provides an opportunity for them to deepen their engagement to the degree that it makes sense for them. And so, again, it's a choose your own adventure. The rights and responsibilities that accrue are based entirely on and proportional to the number of shares in each class that you hold. And so you get to design the system that feels right for you. So balancing the benefactor, we have the farmer caretakers. They would be people who own exclusively or primarily care shares. And with that, they get a balance of access to the resources of the commons as long as in exchange for an obligation of caring for those resources. In a similar way, there's nothing that prevents a farmer caretaker from not also investing in deed shares to the degree that they can. And our hope, our expectation would be that over time, caretakers would increase their investment in the overall project so that they would have an equal balance of deed shares and care shares and turn into what we're calling a homesteader. So one of the other ways of getting involved that we've talked about has been a timeshare cropper. And they likewise have a balance of deed shares and care shares, but less than a full 100 of each. And so it becomes an opportunity for people to make a long-term commitment to the property. And basically, you're like a part-time homesteader, and your part-time is determined by the percentage of shares of 100 that you own in each class. And again, it's something that balances rights and responsibilities and creates opportunities for people to get involved to the degree that they are interested and able. And then a special case of the timeshare cropper would be the homesteader, and that would be somebody who has 100 of each deed share and care share, and that would enable them for full-time habitation on the property, full-time use of the resources of the commons, and to be fully financially invested in the property as well, and have the equity that accrues to that. And then finally, we have ways that people can partake in community shares to get involved. This could be a neighbor who, as I mentioned before, just wants to participate in a little bit of gardening in exchange for a little bit of veg, and they could get access to that simply with a single community share. Likewise, lifeboat builders may want to buy community shares, which would enable them to participate in the commitment pool, and specifically the aspect of the commitment pool that associates with the online Lifeboat Academy activities. So a way of both contributing to that and benefiting from it, and potentially even earning money off of it to the degree that there is a surplus created and you're giving more than you're taking from the common pool. Similarly, this could be through community shares, a way for partners to put a toe in the water and test out if this is a suitable way to get involved for them. They could have slightly more number of community shares, which would enable them to greater access to the resources of the commons. And likewise, there's nothing that prevents them from not also buying care shares or even deed shares, if that would be a way of deepening or growing their commitment to the project. And so basically, these are just some of the ways in which people can tailor their own engagement through the different options of buying shares, the deed shares, care shares, and community shares. It is a choose your own adventure. And again, everything is proportional to the kinds of shares. Your rights and responsibilities are proportional to the shares that you choose to invest in. So that is basically the gist of the Lifeboat Academy, how we're structured, what we're trying to do, and how you can become engaged in it. We do have some FAQs on some questions that I think are likely to come up, but I want to hear from you first to see what's your feedback? What did you like? Where do you have questions? Would you like to hear more about? So you can either comment here on the YouTube video or send mail directly to friends@lifeboat.academy with your questions and feedback, and we'd love to hear from you. Looking forward to it. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.